And welcome to your Political Pulse. We are joined by Democratic State Representative Nicole Uhre-Balk. Nicole, welcome back to Political Pulse, and thank you for coming up the icy hill this morning.
It's good to be back. It is a little slippery out there.
Yeah, full disclosure, we thought about doing this taping last weekend, and I think we were both pretty excited that I think there was kind of this mutual, we didn't even need to announced that we weren't going to be doing the taping last Saturday morning. It was like, that's just off the table.
Too cold. Yeah, a little snow isn't worthy of canceling. So. Okay,
so session began a couple of weeks ago. I want to just start by getting a vibe check from you. What kind of vibe are you getting off of the session right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie, a little tired. And we just had the deadline for submitting unlimited bills, and so just making sure that those were ready to go and submitted, and so we're definitely well on our way into session, and yeah, it's exciting as always. You never really know where things are going to go and how it's going to work out, but it's been great being back and doing the good work.
So we're kind of heading into the debate phase, because the first couple of weeks are kind of the introduction phase. This is our bills, and some bills do start making some mileage, you could say, but overall I would say that we're definitely now getting into that debate phase where these bills are really going to be put up against the ultimate test to see if they pass or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's always fascinating just to see where people are at on different issues and how their values play into where they're coming from, and so definitely as a legislator try to understand, even if I disagree, where they're coming from, what the concerns are, and try to move forward with the best possible policy.
I want to begin with national politics. There's been a lot going on nationally, and yesterday we saw State Senator Jamie Smith. This was in a Democratic leadership press conference. He was expressing his disappointment that he has not heard from state leadership any condemnation about recent events in Minneapolis. Are you with him on that disappointment?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's fascinating. In the governor's press conference, he talked about how, in one breath supporting Kristi Noem, but then in the next breath saying that we shouldn't be jumping to conclusions, and which is exactly what Noem did in saying that he was a domestic terrorist and not even allowing for an investigation to happen. And so, yeah, it's really disappointing and saddening, and it's just wild that this is stemming from a former South Dakotan.
Yeah, I know the South Dakota Searchlight had kind of pointed out what you're talking about there. What kind of messaging would you like to see from our leadership here on issues next door?
Yeah, we need to be doing a full investigation before jumping to conclusions, and that the loss of life over their First Amendment rights of a peaceful protest is, not okay. And there's also a Second Amendment rights issue as a federal person pulled a gun from a person who has a carrying permit as well. And so those are major concerns, let alone the loss of life. And it's just beyond words.
Okay, yesterday, Governor Rowe did announce the signing of his first bill. This is HB 1044, which essentially gave the final okay for about $190 million. This was money allocated out of the big, beautiful bill to help rural hospitals. So this would be $190 million to really help support our rural health system here in South Dakota. Governor Roden said yesterday, by recruiting healthcare professionals, modernizing rural facilities, and expanding access to care, we will ensure South Dakotans in every corner of the state can stay healthy and strong. You were one of the 56 aye votes supporting the allocation of this money. How big of an impact do you think this money is going to make?
Oh, it's going to be huge for our rural hospitals, just absolutely essential. And I know there was some concern on the other side for the no votes of making sure that this is one-time dollars, and I really think the Department of Health is working really hard to ensure that that's the money is allocated for one-time projects. But it's just going to be such an amazing boost, and our rural hospitals need it. It's just such a critical thing right now.
What kind of feedback do you get from South Dakotans on rural health care and where that system needs to be improved?
I mean, definitely, and I think that there's a lot of focus on like telehealth and mental health with that, and ensuring our EMS services are not guaranteed right now, and they need all the help that they can get. Whether and if those one-time funds can be used for actual the infrastructure for EMS, the ambulances themselves, or whatever. so that then other dollars can be used in other places. That's just so important. And so we have healthcare deserts. We have maternity deserts where women aren't able to have places to give birth. Like this, it affects all walks of life in South Dakota, and we have to be doing everything we can to. And it's. The other thing is the concern about the federal deficit. But this money, if we say no, it's just going to go to another state. It's not going to go back and actually help the federal deficit. That's just not realistic or true. So it was a huge gift, and we need to use it to the best of our abilities. Was that federal deficit kind of why this got 11 votes against it in your chamber? Because I saw there was 11 votes against it in your chamber, 2 in the Senate. So I mean, overall, it passed by a pretty wide margin. But that said, I was curious about the opposition you heard on this bill. Yeah, definitely the concern with the federal deficit, and then just concern of will these funds kind of be tipping our waters into having ongoing funding, because it is important that the funds are just for one-time projects. So it's just for technology, infrastructure, or things that we don't then have to continue to pay for. But there's plenty of asks for that, whether it's buildings or technology or whatever it is that can be used to give that boost that then will just help the people be able to do their jobs that much better. Okay, I saw in your chamber yesterday there was also an effort to allow voters in November to decide if they wanted to repeal the expansion of Medicaid in the state of South Dakota. Of course, that was blocked in the House of Representatives, your chamber. You were one of those lawmakers voting against this, blocking this ultimately. Why did you feel it was important to stop this measure? Oh, so many reasons. I mean, again, the voters have already voted on this several years ago. We already have something that will be on the ballot, the 90-10, that will be there. And so it's actually a constitutional question of, like, if voters vote yes for this or no for that, what does that mean exactly, right? And so it just will be really challenging to be able to really communicate to voters what exactly these mean, and if a yes on this and you do a no on this, what does that mean? And then, also Medicaid expansion is so important, and we're finding that it hasn't been overwhelming in numbers that people were maybe even expecting or predicting. It's actually a smaller part of the Medicaid budget than most other parts of it. Just a tiny fraction. And so, and especially with work requirements coming in, like, this is just a really, really important program that we need for all South Dakotans. Have you taken a position on the 90-10? And if I can just explain it real fast, this essentially would allow voters to decide whether or not they want to repeal Medicaid expansion should the federal government decline to pay at least 90% of those costs. I do appreciate this conversation, and as South Dakota relies so heavily on the federal government for subsidies, I do appreciate that. But I think it's important for our state to take care of our people, and this is one of the ways that we can take care of it. And so, I think we'll see what the voters say. Okay, we're seeing a split right now among Republicans as it pertains to data centers. Have Democrats taken a position on data centers? Where are you guys lining up on this? Yeah, I think we've had several meetings. We've gone to many of the town halls just to see. Applied Digital is really the one kind of pushing this legislation, and so. What do they have to offer, and how are South Dakotans going to benefit from this? And when there are some very real risks with electricity and water, and I am kind of at a point of, like, why roll out the red carpet when we don't have safeguards in place for our water? I do feel like Roe's bill does have. I think it does have some protections for electricity as far as increasing rates for members. I think there's protections there where that won't happen, but I'm still very concerned about water. They say it will go to it's up to the local entities, but I think that can be a really complicated issue, and I think we can just really easily put in some really minor protections that would just apply statewide to ensure that that's not an issue. I also would love to see some either requirements and or at the minimum some kind of reporting as far as what are the jobs. They say that they'll be bringing 250 jobs, and that's great, but that's just one company, and I wanna be able to know that if they're getting this big, huge benefit, that South Dakotans are actually benefiting as well.
I did notice in that bill, I think you're talking about 1005, right? I did notice there wasn't really any provisions about jobs in there. There was protecting electric ratepayers, and there was also protecting water supply, making sure they don't
Making sure it goes to
water.
the local.
I didn't see any specific language about jobs. Am I mistaken in that? I mean, I read the bill, but that's been my reading of it.
And we've been hearing it's obviously we're still open to negotiations, so we'll see what will kind of happen coming up. But it's really hard to give a tax exemption to these huge corporate companies, and we're still paying taxes, and the average everyday South Dakotan is still paying taxes on groceries, right? And so it just doesn't compute in my brain, and so I want to make sure that we're safeguarding our fellow South Dakotans before giving tax breaks to the rich.
Well, that's kind of where I see the divide. The divide seems to be around these tax exemptions themselves. If you look at the two kind of main competing bills right now on data centers, one says we're going to provide these protections should a data center come in, so electrical costs are passed on to consumers, water supply is protected, but also we're not going to be giving them any sort of tax exemptions on the equipment inside these data centers. And of course, there's another proposal, and proponents of this would say that these exemptions are what help lure these data centers in and provide a lot of tax revenue to the state of South Dakota. It still comes with the caveat that the only way you're going to get these tax exemptions is that electrical rates aren't passed on to consumers, and that water use is ultimately at a level that the local supply could keep up with. So there's those protections in both, but it seems like the big turning point, or the big, the difference there is these tax exemptions. So I just really think that's what this argument's going to come down to, is whether or not these tax exemptions should go through.
Yeah. And I do think there are some data centers out there that are trying to do it right and are investing in their communities, and they talk a lot. I went up to Allendale in North Dakota, where they have, and they're building homes. They're had an apartment building that was for construction workers, and then are going to turn it into a nursing home when that construction is over. And so that they are doing some good things, but I don't. I want to, again, put in, we don't need to roll out the red carpet without some safeguards in place. And so.
And it sounds like you want a periodical check-in for some of these things.
Minor detail for getting a pretty big tax exemption.
I believe 1005 has some sort of check-in with the Secretary of State every year, right? They have to kind of every single year, I believe, they have to do something to kind of keep this tax exemption rolling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and I am unclear as to exactly what that entails.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right? I saw the language this morning when I was reading the bill.
So that's that's a step in the right direction. But again, and the technology changes so fast, and so some of the arguments are that in 3 years they might not even be using water. But again, until I see it, I want those protections in place. And Google is already looking into putting data centers on satellites, so they might. And what do we do with these these buildings are 17 football fields. They're huge,
right? Huge
buildings with massive amount of an investment,
right.
And so I appreciate that investment, but what happens when they leave? So
well, that's just it, right? If they become decommissioned because technology advances past the need for the size of these buildings, you're still left with the building.
As a technology person who uses my phone and all the things all the time, I understand the NIMBY-ness, and I don't, so I can't say. We can't have them here by any means, but I just think we can put in protections before they come, and just ensure that we're doing it right.
Right, and there could possibly be an argument too, and just to play devil's advocate here, that these data centers bring in so much money in the time they are here. Should those buildings become obsolete here in a few years, they still raised a ton of money for the states the years that they were here.
Yeah, and they are paying. So they're paying property tax, so that local area will benefit greatly from that. And our rural areas, we need jobs. We want to keep our students here. I went into education to ensure that that students can live and thrive in South Dakota, right? So we need that, and yes, 40 other states have done these sales tax exemptions, and so I understand that we need to be competitive. And at some point, we can't have them. They can't just be in one spot because of need for electricity, right? They're going to max out in different places. So I just kind of wonder, do we need to be rolling out the red carpet?
Okay, well, I want to congratulate you on a bill. You had a bill pass overwhelmingly out of the House of Representatives, and this would limit insurance companies from declining or limiting insurance, and this is life, disability, long-term care insurance on people who are organ donors.
Yes.
Is this an issue? Why did you think this bill needed to be brought?
Yeah, no, so definitely the American Kidney Fund brought it forward, one of their policy directors and associate directors, and so when I, came across the email, I was just like, oh, really? Like, wow, that is shocking. And in fact, heard from South Dakotan organ donors that they didn't even know that would be an issue, and that and when you're going into this massive life-changing decision, having to also be worried and concerned about that just is not acceptable for these heroes.
So in the past, what have you been told these companies are doing? So let's say I was an organ donor, I went for life insurance, I went for long-term disability insurance. Like, what is exactly happening to people?
Yeah, so nationally, they are calculating that 1 in 4 actually face discrimination. And so it's like, oh, we'll give you life insurance, but if you have a complication from the actual donation and it was tied to that donation, then we'll either raise your premiums or you might be denied coverage on whatever that.
And this isn't the person receiving the organ. This person giving like a kidney.
This is the person who is giving a kidney, and one thing that I found was interesting is when a donor thinks about giving, right? There's also questions of like, what if my kid needs an organ later? What if my spouse or my sister or family members need that organ later? But the 2 organ donors that we heard from, they gave to complete strangers to ensure that someone else could live their best life. And so that's just such a heroic act. And I just think we need to be doing everything we can. There's lots of other things we could be doing in South Dakota. We got an F rating. There's lots of other things, but I'm excited that this is a small step forward, and just hopeful that the Senate will agree and that we can get this on the books.
Do you think it's going to pass the Senate? And another question I would add to that is, now that it's gotten out of the House of Representatives, do you think it's on the radar of some of these insurance companies now that might be ringing some phones?
Great question. No, and I actually worked with the lobbyist from that represents different insurance companies. And again, I do just want to point out, it isn't affecting health insurance. It is only long-term insurance. So
sorry if I said health
insurance.
No, and
I don't know if you did or not, but just ensure everyone listening understands. So definitely worked with them, and there's some movement at the federal level, and I think most insurance companies are doing the right thing, but we just always want to make sure that we have those protections in state statute. So yeah, actually got a letter of endorsement from the American Long-Term Life Insurance Association. So.
Okay, so they were on board, and it sounds like you did some important work as far as outreach, making sure that whatever you put through wasn't going to get too many barriers against it.
Yep, and it passed with sailing colors. We had 1 no vote, so to have that many people agree on something is always says something big.
Okay, I want to go on to gold. I know you primed on the House side a Senate bill, and ultimately this was going to change the tax structure on gold that's mined here in the state. So right now in the state, it's $4 per ounce. The bill that you were priming essentially would have set the rate at 1% of the market value of the gold essentially mined here in the state. That then got whittled down to 0.5%, and then ultimately in Senate taxation, the bill died. Mm-hmm. So a couple questions here. One, are you going to bring this bill back next session? And 2, can you just explain the thinking on that bill, what your intentions were with that bill, and why you thought that the tax structure needed to change?
Yeah. Well, I will say Senator Roll really took was 100% on the lead on that, and just in wanting a West River person who is passionate about these topics, helped out with that. But yeah, Senator Roll was definitely, doing all the work behind the scenes on that one. So, but I was willing to jump onto it just because you can see by doing the math of when the statute was first put into place, you could see that it was trying to increase by that percentage, that 1%, every year. But then, suddenly it just kind of drops off, and so I think so. It is obvious that the intent was there to have it be that percentage, the 1%. Yeah, I think that there was some in trying to negotiate which water projects, because we were trying to, where does this money go, and wanting it to be for a specific purpose that would, help benefit all South Dakotans with water, because we are concerned with water and mining. So there was kind of some back and forth as to what exactly should that money be going towards, and then yes, we did hear from the community within LEAD of concerns of the mine being a major driver of economic development and jobs, and so that was a concern, and hence why I dropped it down a little bit. That's how negotiations work. Right. You always start with, and if everyone leaves a little unhappy, that's usually the best case scenario. But yeah, we left unfortunately really unhappy. So I think I look forward to continuing the conversation. Nothing this session, but I think we can continue to, this isn't the first time something like this has kind of been brought forward. So we'll just continue that conversation.
But it sounds like, to your knowledge, or to your belief, you just think $4 per ounce at this point is just not enough of a tax on the gold.
No, and I think we could do some more to, per what was originally there, slowly grow that up to the 0.5 or whatever we end up landing on, right? Or to the 1%. We could do some negotiation with that, so it's more of a so that they're able to plan and prepare for that, and would definitely be open to those conversations. So, but yeah, it is still in the works, but that's not the only mining bill that I do have. We do have one coming forward that's a little bit similar to 1258 of last year, which was to address lithium mining and move that over, and we're kind of looking at, especially with the mine that happened in Piedmont and those neighbors that are there that are a little frustrated about that, looking at maybe all mining needs to have the same regulations as silver and gold. So we'll be coming out with that very soon.
Okay,
but
wait a second. Oh, wait, this is a new show. So obviously this bill hasn't, I don't believe I've seen it yet.
No, it has not dropped yet.
So explain this bill if you could, please.
So, and again, just starting to be working with the Mineral Association and working with all partners, but Clean Water Alliance has been the main driver of looking into all the policy and the facts of that. But so there's basically two chapters that regulate mining. One that's for concrete aggregates, so sand, gravel, lithium's in there, limestone's in there. And then there's another chapter that has silver and gold. And so with the aggregates, it's like a one-page application, $100 fine to apply. And there, not the public comment, or they have to put it in the newspaper, but as we saw with what happened in Piedmont, that's not enough anymore, and things have changed. And so, part of that needs to change. Requiring environmental assessments,
but
all those things needs to change.
Bringing the gold and silver requirements to these sandstone mining operations.
Yeah, or I would say let's just have the same requirements for all mines.
That's what I'm saying, just make it uniform for all of the mines. Okay.
And we're still differentiating between small and large mines. So small mines will, if you're under 10 acres, will have, a smaller requirement and things there. But the bonding with silver and gold looks at like the actual acreage. It's more site specific as opposed to just a one-time bond that may or may not actually pay for reclamation costs. And so, and then there's more stringent requirements for reclamation plans and making sure that is put forward. And so, our mining statutes, besides some we did increase the bond a few years ago, but besides that, it hasn't changed since the 80s. And so we just think mining has changed, and so should our laws.
All right. I'm going to ask you the hardest question of this interview. What have we not gotten to that you want to?
Well, I do also one last super positive, because I'm just super excited. I did have a House joint resolution that passed the Senate as well, and so it's actually on the books, and it passed unanimously in both houses. And so H 6003. And it's to just acknowledge the Black Hills Watershed Collaborative, which is a bunch of different organizations, and they are working on actually building beaver dam analogs above the Rapid Creek, above Pactola, in that watershed there. And so they just have a fantastic model of a whole bunch of nonprofits. The U.S. Forest Service is involved, tribal entities are involved, and they're all just working together to work on water conservation. And so just wanted to acknowledge A, their work, and then B, hopefully it can be an educational tool to say, like, look at this fantastic model, and we need to be working on using all the tools that we have, both locally and statewide, to address our water, because it is the #1 issue.
All right. Well, Representative Nicole Uhre-Balk, we appreciate you for coming in. I mean, the weather's not like a whole lot better this morning, but at least it's not -5. Yeah. So thank you for the rescheduling.
All right. Thank you.
All right. And that will do it for your Political Pulse.